Absolute value is a function that takes a number and makes it positive. If it's negative, it makes it positive. If it's positive, it keeps it the same. So it's just, we write it as these straight line bars, absolute value, x, like that. And what you want to think of is when you put something inside absolute value bars, it's always going to turn positive. So for instance, if I did absolute value of 4, it would just be 4. If I do absolute value of negative 3, it will turn it to positive 3. So it has the property where if x is greater than 0, then the absolute value of x is just x. If x is less than 0, then the absolute value of x is going to be negative x. And we kind of use it inherently without thinking about that property. But when we're solving absolute value equations, we want to sort of keep that in mind. So an absolute value equation looks like ax plus b equals c. Notice that we have absolute value stuff on the left and a number on the right. And so what we want to do is sort of categorize how we solve this. Well, if c is less than 0, meaning this number on the right-hand side is negative, then we can't solve it because we just said that an absolute value is always positive. So this is going to have no solutions if you try to make it equal to a negative number. If I say absolute value of x is negative 10, you say, I can't find any numbers that will make that true because when I take the absolute value, it's always going to be positive. If c is 0, it's going to have exactly one solution. Because what you're saying is absolute value of 3x plus 9 is equal to 0. So you can find only one value of x that will make that true. If c is positive, then it has two solutions. It could be that ax plus b equals c, or ax plus b can equal negative c. So how do we solve an absolute value equation? Well, to solve an absolute value equation, we get the absolute value part all by itself. So you look at the equation, you look for the absolute value part, you get it all by itself. That might mean you have to move some constants by adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing so that the only part you have is the absolute value part. If c is bigger than 0, you write it as two equations, these two, one equal to c and one equal to negative c, and then you solve because now they're just linear equations. So let's try it. For this first one, we have absolute value of 1 minus 4x. That's my absolute value part. Minus 1 equals 5. So to solve this, we want to first get that absolute value part all by itself. So I need to add 1 to both sides since he's not inside the absolute values. So I have absolute value of 1 minus 4x equals 6. So now what I see is because I have absolute value equal to a positive number, I'm going to write this as two equations. Equation number 1 is just like it looks. 1 minus 4x is equal to 6. Equation number 2, 1 minus 4x is equal to negative 6. And now I'm going to take a second and solve these equations separately because I'm going to get two different solutions. So notice when you remove the absolute values, that's when you put the positive and negative in. Don't put the positive and negative in at the very end. Okay, so this is a linear equation I solved just like I did before. Subtract 1 from both sides. Negative 4x equals 5. Divide both sides by negative 4. And I get x equals negative 5/4. I'm going to solve the second equation exactly the same way. Subtract 1 from both sides. Negative 4x equals negative 6 minus 1 makes negative 7. Divide by negative 4. X equals negative makes positive 7/4. So my two solutions are negative 5/4 and 7/4. A lot of times they ask us to write the solution set and we put them inside those little curly braces. Okay, let's try again. So the second one says negative absolute value of that 2x plus 1 equals negative 3. This is the absolute value part. So remember, I begin by getting that absolute value part all by itself. I have a negative 1 times the absolute value. So to get it by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. So that gives me absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. Now it looks just like the one we just did. So I'm going to break it up into two equations. 2x plus 1 is 3, and 2x plus 1 is negative 3. And I'm going to solve these equations separately. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. 2x is equal to 2. Divide both sides by 2. X is equal to 1. Same thing on the other equation. Subtract 1 from both sides. Negative 3 minus 1 makes negative 4. Divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 2. Again, when you take away the absolute value is when you put in the positive and negative. Not at the end. You can't just solve one and put a positive and negative. So my two solutions, again, are going to be 1 and negative 2. Okay, let's look at the last one. Absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals negative 5. We can't find any values of x that make an absolute value equal to negative 5. This guy over here, this negative 5, says no solution. The absolute value can't be negative.